welcome to 216, a Link to the Past Randomizer podcast. I am your host, Fear Agent. On the show today, we've got Trinexx. Really great conversation with Trinexx. Excited for everyone to hear this one. Really love Trinexx's approach to the game and kind of his philosophy on rando and just his overall approach to life. Really, big fan of Trinexx and excited to get to that interview. We've got the league underway with week 1 going on. Just a couple more days left of All Dungeons Co-op, one of my all-time favorite modes, and one of the reasons why the league even exists. Really love co-op. I really just love playing the game with someone else. I think dividing up the checks and hanging with your buds, just kind of easing the stress and the tension of the game a little bit is a lot of fun, even though it's very stressful playing co-op at times as well. And I think from what I've seen from the first week so far, as we're about 3 or 4 days in, is that people haven't practiced a lot of co-op. That's the one thing that I've been noticing. Back in the early days of the league, there was a lot of co-op going on, and there was a co-op AD tournament that happened as well. And so there was a lot more practice for co-op, AD specifically. And I can kind of see the difference between then and now. And co-op is a completely different way of playing the game. You have to approach playing co-op AD different than you would solo, open, or standard, or all dungeons. You really have to approach it different. I feel like I've seen people make routing choices that don't necessarily take advantage of what you can do with co-op. I see a lot of people splitting up, which is always good. You don't necessarily want to be in the same spot as your partner. You want to be trying to get as much information as possible. Really, the goal is to get to go mode as fast as possible. And a lot of what I've seen is people splitting up and one person kind of focusing on dungeons and one person focusing on overworld. That can make things lopsided. I think one of the biggest things I've seen, or one of the biggest pieces of advice that I would give, is to make sure that you and your partner are keeping pace. And my goal when I'm playing with Gamma is for the two of us to finish within a minute of each other. That's really the goal. And if I'm behind on dungeons, I'm not the one doing the cleaning up. I'm doing the one that's kind of catching up, and vice versa. If he's a little bit behind, I'll go ahead and do the scouting. It's hard. It's a different mode. It's hard. It's hard to be good at co-op. It takes a lot of practice because it is a lot different than just playing by yourself. Adaptation is another aspect where when you're playing solo, it's a little bit easier to adapt to the chain of progression. You have more time to think. In co-op, you make a plan, and that plan could be out the window in a second if your partner finds, say, the hammer or something. So you got to be able and willing to adapt and change your plan on the fly and try to make the best decisions. Like anything in this game, if you want to get good at it, it does take practice. Communication is key, and knowing your partner's tendencies, knowing what they like to do, knowing how they like to route also really helps. So my biggest advice for people would just be to practice as much as possible. Now we're at the end, or getting toward the end of co-op AD. And so, not everyone's going to be able to take some of this advice and apply it. But we do have co-op retrants coming up in week 4. And that just amplifies everything that I'm talking about. Make sure you're practicing co-op retrants. Communication is the biggest factor in being successful in this mode. Ramon and I haven't played a lot together, but we've been doing some co-op retrants just to get familiar, just to get comfortable with how we each route, how we make decisions, how we can adapt to the changes as the seed happens. It takes a lot of work. So if you want to be successful in the league, practice, practice, practice. Be mindful of where you and your partner are relative to the end. Be mindful of adapting to changes in the route based on items or keys that are found, and know how your partner likes to route. I love it. I love co-op so much. Co-op AD is the best. Co-op retrants is even better. I love entrance, and doing it with a partner is great. Co-op cross keys is tough because you got to really have a good way of keeping note of the entrances, of all of the small keys and the big keys, and all the items as well. Retrants alleviates that quite a bit. Money management has to play a little bit more of a factor in co-op entrance. That's a little bit easier to do than marking a lot of the keys and entrance locations. So yeah, really excited for co-op entrance week coming up in week 4. We got Ambrosia coming up week 2. And speaking of Ambrosia, we've got the 216 weekly this Saturday, noon Eastern, available to everyone to play. Will be restreamed on my channel, twitch.tv/fearagent_, and we will be playing Ambrosia as chosen by Plasma Kappa. So get a little Ambrosia practice in before week 2. Heading into the final 3 episodes of the season. I've had a lot of fun doing this show. I've had a blast talking to the guests. I've had a blast interacting with the community and just kind of hopefully creating a more positive space for everyone to hang out in. And I'm hoping when you listen to the show that you're able to hear the guest's perspective and really kind of take it in and kind of understand them a little bit better and, help turn them in from just an avatar you see in Discord to a real person. But I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on the show as we move forward into season 3. What would you like to see on the show? What do you want to get from this show? Are you happy with the format as it is? Is there changes you'd like to see? Who are some of the guests you'd like to hear in season 3 as well? If you join the Discord, you can let me know. 216pod.com has a link to the Discord. And I would just love to hear people's opinions on the show as we head to the end of season 2 and look forward to what the future holds for the podcast. I'm having a really good time. But let me know. What do you think of the show? What would you like to see different in season 3? And who would you like to see on in season 3? Let me know. For today, we've got Trinexx. And again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, big fan of this dude. Really love his approach to the game. And I really enjoyed talking with him. I thought it was a really fun conversation. And it's someone that I kind of wish that I knew in real life so that we could go to one of those like bowling leagues and have some brews and do some bowling and have some fun. So I'm really excited for you to hear this interview. Enough of me yammering. Let's get to that. Here's Trinexx. Trinexx, I'm super excited to have you on the show today. We go way back. I remember you helping me out early on. This is one of the things I kind of want to focus on in the episode is how helpful you are. Is I had a SNES Classic, the little mini ones, and I was trying to get MSUs on. It was like a pain in the ass to get MSUs on, and you went out of your way to like really help me figure that out. Now I no longer play on the SNES Classic, but for the time that I did, it was super helpful, and I kind of see that from you in the community as someone that's like super helpful. And so, first of all, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. This is a great opportunity to talk about useless things I've done, like getting MSU on the SNES Classic that required
well, it changed my life.
It required like extra hardware. You had to buy like a $10 dongle to get it working, and it was just stupid. Actually,
it was really dumb. I'm not technically savvy at all, and so how you were able to like even help me shows a lot of your willingness to help others, because I'm like you got to dumb it down, and then like you'll dumb it down. I'm like, oh, I still don't even understand any of that. So I remember you being a part of the community when I got here. When did you start playing Link to the Past Randomizer? So I started basically where a lot of, I guess, equivalent that to Boomer's level of like, it was the Christos and Andy AGDQ rather. Yeah. And saw that one, and it just got me interested enough to start looking into it. And so I think I joined it directly through some link, but it was that and also like a side way with seeing a thread about it on the Something Awful forum. So joined up that way, and then just started playing some early seeds. It was great. And then from there, just sort of bit and just kind of went from there. Yeah. And you've been a part of the community ever since. So you mentioned Something Awful, and I think it was Oro that mentioned the Something Awful forums. Yep. So I take it you've been a part of the Something Awful forums for a long time. Yeah.
I mean, I was mostly a person who just kind of like read and lurked them since like at least 2007. But usually there's some like different threads about games I'm playing. And if it's multiplayer, there's usually some community that you can just join on for a little bit there and just kind of start doing some random pickup stuff.
Mm-hmm. Did that help you with the finding ALTTPR or getting into the ALTTPR then?
It's hard for me to remember how this started. I'm just thinking back now, like everything is just kind of a blur as to what happened in what order. But I do remember that I think it was Sailor Nep had done the original posting for that thread, and there were some different weeklies and whatnot there, and I would kind of join up and play some random stuff there. But
so
I think this was a little Oh, sorry. Yeah, just a little bit after I started playing a random casual seeds and then posting about it in the main server and just trying to figure out what I didn't know.
Sure. So what about your gaming history? When you were a kid, were you growing up with games? Link into the Past, being one of the games that kind of...
Yeah, I would say that my first early memory was probably of having a NES back when I was like 5 or so there. Like I actually can't remember when I got it. It just sort of like was always there to a certain point.
I have that same sort of feeling. It's like I remember getting it for a Christmas, but which Christmas I couldn't tell you because it just feels, when you're 5, 6, 7 years old, it's like how do you remember any of that stuff?
Yeah, it's like I remember like being a part of playing the original Zelda. I think my mother played that a little bit, then kind of helped me get into it. And my dad was always growing up playing arcade games, so the similar ones that were released for the NES, like Galaga or Burger Time, those ones I think I actually still have for the most part there. But Mario 3, Mario 1, all the ones I remember playing. But that was just sort of like a baseline history. And then I didn't get a SNES until I was probably about 8 or so. I think it was like a birthday gift, and it was hooked up for me before I had woken up. And from moving from the NES to the SNES, I do remember that it took me at least 2 hours or something like that to figure out how to turn the SNES on. Like it wasn't a press button, it was a slider, and it just did not occur to me how to do that.
That's funny. There's no that red button, you get the little light on. And I think there was a light on the SNES, I can't remember, but that it's so less intuitive to slide it up.
And I think at that point I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I just like for some reason just could not figure it out for a bit of time. But right inside there was Mario World, and so it took me like 8 or so days to get through that the first time, and then not long afterwards I got Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, and so that's kind of where things started from there for my SNES journey.
Sure. So are you the type of player, or were you the type of player that would like spend 8 days to finish the game, and were you trying to complete it all, or were you just trying to beat it? I
think for the Mario World, I'm not sure what it was exactly. I think it was the simple beating it. So just getting through the normal 7 worlds or whatever, and then just getting to the end. But I don't remember doing special worlds at the time there. Some of this might be after the fact, but I do remember getting like the 96 exits, but that might have just been sort of an after the fact when I was trying to figure out something to do after.
Sure. I think back of those days and how hard Super Mario World was at the time as a kid. I mean, it seems so quaint now compared to what we have. Yeah. And like, with like Mario Maker and the way the Super Mario World ROM hacks and stuff that are like really pushing the levels of what you can do with Mario. But I had a hell of a time beating Super Mario World. I loved it, but it was not easy. It was not easy for me to get
I remember having issues with actually trying to figure out how to use the cape properly, as in like you can fly, but it wasn't in the Mario 3 just like press the button and like eventually come back down, but like to have to get the coins in that one special pipe area, just like the back and forth rocking motion, it just wasn't as intuitive to me at that point.
Sure. Yeah. So what was it about Link to the Past that kind of captured you? Were you, you said you played a little bit of Zelda, right? The first one?
Yeah. So like I had some memory of it, the first one, and then I think that I played the second one a little bit there, but I actually don't have a strong memory of my initial playthrough of the first, Link to the Past. My first playthrough there. Like I, enjoyed it. Sure. Just like it's obviously one of the games that had a formative factor in my life, but I have no like explicit memory of like enjoying certain parts of the first time there. But
sure. So as your gaming journey goes on, do you stick with Nintendo, or are you kind of branching out?
It was kind of a back and forth thing. I think I did eventually get an N64 for my birthday sometime later on that had, Mario, then I got Zelda and all that good stuff there. But I know that a friend of mine had a PlayStation, and the biggest draw to that one was, of course, like Final Fantasy VII. Yeah. And so playing through that stuff there, I know we did some trades back and forth, and at some point I managed to like either buy it off him. I can't remember what the situation was, but I'm like staring at my old PS1 now, and I have no games for it except for some random ones there. But it's like somehow the console survived, but I probably sold off all the games to fund whatever the next thing that came down the line.
Sure. So was it Final Fantasy VII for you that kind of hooked you into the PlayStation?
I would say pretty much that, yeah. Like I remember doing like some Metal Gear type stuff there. I think I remember playing like Siphon Filter or kind of other stuff there. I think I had like other, but it was like Siphon mostly Filter. RPGs.
Wow, yeah, like, there were good games haven't heard in a long time. Yeah.
They weren't good games, but they were like entertaining games. So
sure. Yeah. There's a lot of them. I think back to like Tomb Raider was the big one for me for the PlayStation.
I did not play Tomb Raider, but it was big at the time. I just never get a chance to play it for no particular reason.
It was big, but I could never get into it. Like every time I tried to play it, I was like, I don't really like this. I'd rather be playing Ocarina of Time or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's felt like really weird platforming, and like the shooting probably wasn't very like intuitive, but.
Sure. I mean, even some of the 64 stuff, as I've gone back and played it again, it's like, man, this is rough. This is not, I'm spoiled by analog sticks or, like stuff that's a little bit more smooth and fluid.
Having two analog sticks, more specifically.
Yeah. Because I played so much GoldenEye was like GoldenEye and Mario Kart 64 were like, I remember leaving school to play those and just grinding hours and hours with friends. And now I play it again. I'm like, oh, this is rough.
Yeah, it's like the single stick movement of GoldenEye is like at the time felt great. It's like you'd use the C buttons to move around strafing, but it's like in hindsight, like how do you actually aim? Like you have to press the button, stop every movement to go, and
right.
It just does not feel bad. But I do have memory of like actually unlocking every single cheat you can get in GoldenEye, and that being one of like my major like video game like achievements in my life.
Sure. God, those was such good times. And maybe it's just the nostalgia of it, right? Like just going back and thinking about all those hours grinding that stuff out.
It's probably like my first like thought into like speedrunning technically, because it's just trying to get like the certain levels of time.
Oh, for GoldenEye?
Yeah. It's like I never did it properly, but other than like those challenges, it's like having to grind some certain levels. I think it was Facility specifically was like taking hours and hours of just grinding to get like the right RNG to line up to get you whatever, like DK mode or like paintballs or whatever.
Right. Yeah. That stuff was so good. So as you're getting older, are you still playing video games as you?
Yeah, I would say I probably played them pretty consistently throughout most of my entire life. I mean, I guess early on, like at college there might be some lull, but I have like some random game I've been playing probably from then till now. But of course, the quality thereof have been varying since then. But
sure. But I mean, the quantity is also higher, right? Like back when we're talking about, SNES and NES and stuff, you're either a Nintendo guy or a Sega guy. And then sort of like Sony kind of comes in, and then Xbox comes in, and, then all of a sudden you have a lot more options. And then you got the PC games sort of thing going as well.
Yeah, it's like I definitely joined PC stuff after definitely towards the end of my high school, early college days, because I just didn't get a new console. And so picking up random things you can get there. And I had sort of a potato PC, so you really couldn't run anything that interesting at the time. So kind of like going back in time to do other things. Like I think Half-Life was probably one of the early ones I did, but I could never run Half-Life 2 because there was a huge gap between then. And so it was just sort of playing multiplayer games that popped up that just so happened to run on my PC or laptop for college.
Yeah, Half-Life was a big one. I don't think I ever beat Half-Life 2, but that kind of got me into Counter-Strike stuff. And that was sort of my introduction.
I hated Counter-Strike, but at the time, I loved Team Fortress Classic.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that for sure. Why did you hate Counter-Strike?
Because I probably sucked at it, and I was always waiting 5 minutes between matches.
Yeah, that will do it for you for sure.
It's like whatever, playing on D-Dust and then like getting shot in the head by some AWP like the first 30 seconds, and I'm just watching my team lose by getting the bomb going off or whatever.
Gosh, again, that trip down memory lane, that Dust level, because I actually didn't play a lot. Now that I think back of it, I didn't play a lot of Counter-Strike, but I did play a lot of Counter-Strike Source. Which was the big upgrade that I remember, and Dust was one of those levels, and then there's like Dust 2. Gosh, that's like, I haven't thought about those in like 15 years, but holy shit. that was. Yeah,
I never played Source, but it was basically before 1.6. I think was like the final version of the classic version.
Yep. Yeah. I did play some 1.6. That was a good time. All right, so coming back to like Link to the Past, when you first find it, are you and you find like GDQ, are you watching speedruns? Are you watching Twitch?
So it's kind of a weird history. It's like I do have memory of being into the speedrun, of knowing what speedruns were rather. And my first memory of being a person to follow it was actually, I think probably like the early 2000s, where it was, I was actually Ocarina of Time, when I was like one of the runners that, of course, the person who's since been confirmed for cheating had done like a sub 5 hour run of Ocarina of Time. And that was like kind of a big deal. It's like breaking some sort of big hour record. And I remember like trying to like watch whatever stuff from Speed Demos Archive to be able to like see it a little bit. But I don't think I've ever watched its entirety because it was just a pain in the ass to download the whole thing.
Sure. There's no YouTube or Twitch or VOD.
Exactly.
It's like you had to download these giant files and low bit rate and yeah.
It was more in awe of the achievement of it versus actually like being able to like reproduce it or do some stuff there. But that got me the idea of like wanting to try to do speedrunning stuff, even though I didn't fully like understand what it took to do something like that. Mm-hmm. And so I think I do remember joining Speed Demos Archive and their forums for some period of time. And I thought like middle of college, I had some sort of lull between classes. And I thought like, oh, maybe I'll try doing a speedrunning thing of whatever game I had, which I think which seemed easier, which was Mischief Makers. And well, I had the idea of doing it, but the moment I sat down and like set my VHS tape up for that kind of things there, realizing that my class load decided to explode. So I made a thread for it and then immediately just abandoned it because I just couldn't do any of that stuff there. But it's also a good thing that I didn't do it because watching some stuff afterwards is like the way people were playing that game was like way out of my league. And I just didn't fundamentally understand what it took to go fast, I guess.
Mm-hmm. What game was this again?
Mischief Makers. It was on the N64. It was a 2D side scroller. It was kind of weird. It's like the biggest thing was like you're playing this main character with Marina who grabbed things. She would say shake, shake. And then I don't know how to describe it other than that.
Okay, I'll have to look it up because it does not ring any bells. Was it a popular game or was it more one of those kind of like niche?
It was more niche games. I think a lot of people do refer to it after the fact, but it's like I don't even know where that copy of my game went anymore. I probably sold it at some point, but that was just one of the random ones that I felt like, oh yeah, this seems interesting enough, and I kind of enjoyed it. So
you weren't able to do this one because of your schedule. Did you then eventually find a game to speedrun? I
did not. At some point, I think I just started looking into watching it sometime down the line because I think this is probably like 2007 or so, and I didn't really do any level of like thinking about it until like I was doing. Watching GDQ stuff. And at that point, watching it was so much easier than the idea of playing it.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I can't remember when I started watching GDQ. I was looking at my Twitch account. It's like at least it's 2013. But I do remember some of the early ones was like probably watching like Yoshi's Island from Trinexx.
Sure.
Some of the people I would watch. And then I can't remember any of the names I would see at the time, but it would just be whatever caught my eye. I would check it out. And then, but I wouldn't like join the community or talk or anything like that. I would just more lurk than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Those early GDQs, was that Twitch yet or was it still just on TV?
I can't remember at this point. I know I think it was probably Twitch when I started watching him. But
yeah, because when you're talking about those early Trinexx runs, it's funny watching back because of how big GDQ has become and how small it started. It was very, very, very niche, just a small group of people doing speed runs. But
yeah, I think it was like the common thread was like this really bad looking red couch or something like that there. Or...
Right. Yeah. And now it's a huge corporation. So you see Andy and Christos do that swordless race and you go and find a way to download some seeds. You start playing casually or do you jump into the racing scene? What's going on?
I definitely started casually first. So just trying to get an idea of, because I think at that point I had not played A Link to the Past in probably like 8 or so years. Like it's just been sort of like, a game that I enjoy, but it just never actually had a chance to sit down and play again. And so I went headfirst into the randomizer and I don't think I ran into anything extremely weird, except I think I had a bow in GT Big Chest early on, which is like something I've never seen since then. But it's just like, how can you go so long without having this bow? And it's just like, it's in the weirdest place possible. But
so what was it then about the run or Link to the Past randomizer that kind of hooked you, since you, as you mentioned, hadn't played Link to the Past in so long?
Well, I've always enjoyed the game. Like I do have memories back in the day. So I don't remember the initial runs of it, but at some point, one of my friends from across the street, we would play together as sort of a weird thing where it's like he would travel through the overworld, but for some reason he couldn't do dungeons. So I would just pick up the dungeons and complete from there. Nice. And then we would just swap back and forth for a little bit. So it was like he travels, I beat as this level thing there.
Yeah.
And so I
so
played a couple
basically
times.
He wasn't very good at the game because traveling to dungeons is like the easy part of the game.
Well, right? The easy part until except you're just exploring, walking around, trying to figure out what to do next. But
yeah. You do the hard stuff. I'll do the fun stuff. That's good.
But yeah, so I do have strong memories of the game itself. And of course, I use this, handle for, a reason, but it's sort of
Did you have the handle before you got into Rando?
Yeah, I've been using this probably as long as I can think of it online, in just terms of I needed some handle to have. I think it was actually Half-Life Deathmatch. I went online and then I was using some variation or a nickname of my real name. And I joined the server, and what happens is if there's another person with the exact same name as you, you have like a 1 put in parentheses next to the end of your name. And I didn't know why that was a thing, other than the fact that, okay, you were not original enough, so therefore you get to put like the default bad name.
Right.
And so once I realized what that was, I went through and I had like the Link to the Past Player's Guide near me. And I went through the book and I just looked at whatever random name looked interesting to me at the time. And so Trinexx with the 2 X's looked cool enough, so therefore I just chose it. And I've been using that consistently since probably the late 90s.
Wow, that's hilarious. You would think, having the name Trinexx, that you would have been like a Link to the Past expert. No, it's just a cool name that you found from a game that you enjoyed.
I mean, it was either that or Vitreous, awesome. And I think I chose better, but...
I do think you chose better. It's way better than Vitreous. I don't know if I'd have you on the show if your name was Vitreous. I'm just kidding.
That's pretty fair, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so you pick up the seeds, you're playing casually. How are those going besides the bow in GT?
Well, it's like I think I started seeing my times come down relatively fast. I think my first seed was about 7 hours, and then I went down from like 5, 3 and change. But I didn't quite break the 3-hour range for some period of time. It's like I think it was probably over the course of a month, because I didn't start until late January 2018. And then I don't think I joined any race until probably late February. But I can't remember what prompted me to join. It was probably one of the large races that happened in the weeklies. Like on the Sundays, you would get into 86 players or something like that. There's some really large amount. And those felt more, I guess, friendly for me to join, where I could play and anything I did literally did not matter. Because it's just like I would just fall into the end part of the stuff there. It would just be a no person, just non-entity. As long as it didn't get last, nothing really mattered at that point in time. But I think that was kind of how I started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those big races, there's a bit of, I don't know, it's less competitive feeling, but while still being competitive, right? Like if you finish, say, an 80-person race, you finish 50th, how are you going to...
Yeah, like those definitely felt a lot more approachable to me, of just being like kind of an anonymous person versus having to do more intimate races and actually like feeling you get the lower end of stuff or higher end. But well, I wouldn't be higher end at that point, but
sure. So are you grinding? Are you doing any sort of offline practice? Are you thinking about jumping into NMG?
At this point, not really. I mean, I didn't do NMG until sometime later on, but I think it was doing those races, feeling comfortable enough to join other stuff there, because I had been doing. I've been doing IRC stuff for several years at that point, so it wasn't too intimidating to actually get into the old SRL stuff. But I think it was due to my schedule be after work that it was the former nightly races. So it was SG had stopped doing daily races for, I think, tournament related reasons, and I think it was sort of the community doing some pickup races at 10 o'clock every night, and that was the ones I was able to join up and do kind of things more often during the week. And so
so when do you start to step into the more competitive stuff? Do you start doing tournaments or?
So I did not. So I think by the time I was starting to get comfortable with racing, I think the early tournament that popped up was the infamous 512 Swiss. And I was not quite ready to jump into that kind of stuff there. Even though that I think in hindsight, based on the people who joined, I was more than qualified to do it, but I just didn't. I didn't feel like it at that point in time, and so I think that was one of my biggest regrets, is not joining that cluster of a tournament. To be
infamous tournament, right?
It's like I don't have the same battle scars as other people because I was watching it from the sides.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that was we think about like the league or some of the main tournaments and how many races are going on there, but damn, 512 people doing a Swiss is just insane. And I remember, because it's when I started watching and there was like so many races on Speed Gaming. It was just wall to wall ALTTPR action. So when do you decide to start to get more, I guess, competitive?
So it's hard to say, because it's like I started doing other tournaments. I think the first one I have listed in terms of like doing 1v1 was actually something awful related. And I think this was probably, I think it was like late summer, early fall of 2018. And so that's like the first memory I have of joining a tournament. And looking through the list here of like people I've played against, it's like I do remember it's like no one who still is active in the community, but I did play Bwayne early on. And I think I lost that race by like 9 seconds. I think it was back when we were both not good, but he was like definitely like the person to beat.
Right.
And I think I did a dumb like ice palace dip that paid out for me. But at some point I could not execute GT, and then at some point just failed myself at that point. But otherwise, like that's kind of like my early memories of getting it. And so after that, it'd be like trying to join I think the qualifiers for that main tournament. I think I played one, and then I had to do traveling, and then at that point I joined the Challenge Cup.
I see. So the something awful thing, are you starting to develop like a community over there with the rando people?
So I did have some community going on there. Like I think the most of my playtime actually was sort of the people who I'd done from the those early nightly races, which ended up being like Scary Olive. I know like Ultima was the people at the time there. I think Oase, the people, my current tournament teammates, but those are the people I was starting to play with first, and then had some kind of way to go. But this was like kind of an alternate thing to have, it's just a secondary community I was playing with. But
yeah, gosh, well, our stories are so similar in the fact that you back when the group races were happening, you'd kind of group with the people that were in your time zone, like your playing time zone. That's kind of how I got hooked up with Gamma. Is we're both Pacific, so we're both racing late night, and you kind of find those people that are. It
wasn't quite late night enough. This is actually one of my reasons why I actually hate cross keys, is that when that was starting to become a popular thing back in that time period, they would like start at like 1 a.m. my time. And so I would just never be able to join because 4 hours for an entrance seed that I've never played before seemed like an awful way to start the next day. And so every time those would be called for, I just never was able to join. So for me, not playing cross keys is more of like a mental hurdle than anything else.
Sure. Yeah,
I feel bad of missing all the stuff. Therefore, I never want to play this again. So far in League, I've never had to play it, and I hope to keep doing that this year, but we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, we'll see. So you said you joined the Challenge Cup. How did that go?
I did okay. I got out of groups. I mean, looking through my list, I think I had the first time I ran into wall kicks, and I got my ass kicked pretty thoroughly.
Sure.
And then just going through some of the earlier stuff there, it's like, I made it like a few rounds after brackets. I think I was like, I had beat Alazun, but lost to Hacksaw.
Okay.
So, I mean, a couple rounds, but not too bad there. But
what's your play style? Because this is not something that I really know about you. Are you competitive? Are you more casual? Are you somewhere in between?
That's what I would guess, right? Somewhere more in between. And there was a period of time where like I did want to improve. I had more free time. I was really like into the game. And so I think it was early on, I would play a race and I would die to blind like 7 times and I would forfeit. And then I would like spend an hour trying to learn the blind fight, the blind script. And like there's a period of time where I was like feeling into like trying to improve myself. And at some point that led me to like some early NMG stuff, but it wasn't really a focused situation. It was just sort of, this is a way to do improvement in a way that's like you can compare to others. It's like, random is pretty open-ended. You can have any random stuff of gear, but like if you want to like see a side-by-side comparison, this is the way to do that. So that's kind of when I first kind of picked it up and doing some stuff there.
Was that shortly after the cross or the Challenge Cup, or
probably? Like I can't remember when I picked it up exactly, but I was just sort of doing some random stuff on the side. But I didn't do any like major grinding, and probably till like the start of 2018 or so. 2019 rather.
Sure.
And then actually trying to get some stuff down from there.
Sure. Now, speaking of 2019, you are one of the few people that have been a part of the league since the beginning. Like you've had a team since season 1 and it's continued through season 5. So tell me how, because I don't even remember all of this. How did you find out about the league? How did you join? And then how did Two Pearl, Two Furious come about? So
I believe that it was Ultima had gotten wind of it some way, shape, or form. I don't even know where exactly. And I think they were looking for teams to join up because they were thinking like, you get like, I think it was 16 teams total at the time.
16, yeah.
Yeah, it's like if we signed up early, we might be able to get in there. I think you could get like a heads up ahead of time that this might be a thing. And I think he was trying to recruit people. I was on board, and I think we're trying to get some third person. And I think at that point, Scary Olive was trying to be recruited by one of the other French Canadians team. I think it might have been like they French Canadians.
Oh, okay.
And I think at some point we took him for everything else, but we were having some trouble trying to find a team name before signing up, and we were just doing some spitballing on some of the stuff that we had. So at some point, I think 2 Pearl, 2 Furious came up as a random name. It was just a complete shitpost, and Ultima signed up with it, and that's just kind of how we stuck with it.
It's such a good name that has lasted throughout these 5 seasons, and I love it. I love it so much. It was definitely my favorite that first season. The logo and everything is perfect as well.
Yeah, I think the team itself was like was taken after a special match during the 512 Swiss. I think it was Doom Tap versus Terra Nunce or something like that there. And somehow Doom Tap had formed a seed where it was broken, and he actually got 2 pearls early on. And this was done via jank restream. I think it was Scary Olive doing the restream, and he was just trying to like figure out what was going on. At some point, all the admins joined up trying to figure out what was happening, and it was kind of just a big clusterfuck, and it was just trying to figure out what was going on. And at some point, like I guess like Doom Tap probably like tried to re-randomize a randomized seed or something happened there, but it was one of the early situations where I think Olive was not doing any major restreams or any major commentary yet. But after that, just the way he handled it was sort of like he was getting asked to do more commentary on like major channels since then. But
sure,
yeah, jank restreams is basically the way to go from going back in the day.
Yeah, and Scary. I mean, I have to get Scary Olive on the show because he's become a meme on his own from the league. You know, I think it was from season 1 that his meme image came from. It could have been season 1. Season 2.
It would have been season 2. It would have been it because that was the first time we had it.
Right. That was the spoiler log co-op pilot thing that we came up with for League. And he was piloting either you or your teammate. I can't remember which.
It was Oase at the time. And I think they were reading through it. And this is a common thing with regard to him where it's like reading Skull Woods and thinking it's Swamp Palace or some back and forth there. And had Oase finish Swamp and then a pendant drop. He's like, dude, what am I doing? It's a pendant.
Yeah. And the look on Scary Olive's face is just classic. So if you actually go to the League site and you look up 2 Pearl 2 Furious, you see Scary Olive's his image, and that's from that moment. That was so awesome. So tell me about that first season of the League, because the League was, just being developed. We had no idea what it was going to be.
I've said this before, but I think that season 1 of the League was probably my most memorable part of anything to do with this community whatsoever. It was just a chance to have fun with your friends and just watch them play random games with other people. There was no real commitment. There was no sense of competitiveness. You were just playing games with other people, and it was just it was just fun. And it's really hard to like specify like how great it was to play these relatively competitive games, or like games that are close with other people that didn't really mean anything. It's like there was nothing, there was no outcome. Like there was like no push to go like further on the brackets. You just had, was it probably 6 or 7 weeks? I think it was 6 weeks early on, right?
Yeah, it was 6 weeks that first time. Yeah.
And then you just played 6 weeks and you were just kind of done. And that was great.
Yeah, because I think we were coming off of 2 main tournaments in 2018, right? And one of those main tournaments was you play 15 games regardless of your record. And it was such a burnout. I think they even did that in the Challenge Cup as well. And people were just so like over playing tournament races. But I also like that competitive nature of tournament races, but doing it with friends. I thought that was the part that was missing.
Yeah, I think with the friends part makes it a little bit kind of less stressful overall to me. Like I didn't have to perform for them, but I was able to sit and watch, because it was like, if I don't feel like playing this week, I didn't necessarily have to. We could plan ahead of time. So like you get some breaks off, and just the general format of it just hit me better than probably most anything else I think I've played at that point in time. Right.
That first season, we only had 1 week of co-op, which was unfortunate. But there was also, I think you had to only play like 3 or 4 games over a 6-week period. So it's like less stressful or whatever.
Yeah. It's like I'm looking through my history. It was like 5 games total I played, and the 2 of which were co-op, because that was the week we had to do some stuff there.
Sure. But I don't know if you remember, but we played that first season.
It was an inverted steed with like Moon Pearl in Crystal Roller. And we both sucked. Like absolutely,
Right.
we did not understand the mode at all.
Right.
And
well, inverted was so new at the time, and I had been grinding it and playing it a lot, so I was pretty confident in that, except for that situation, which happened. I think if you were more involved in like entrance, I didn't realize you could get all the way to Crystal Roller Room and the way that it was, and I ended up forfeiting early. I felt so bad about that one because not only was the seed that Moon Pro was really shitty, but the rest of the seed, I think from what I remember, was even worse.
Yeah, I think it was the moment the light world opened up. I have no explicit memory except for that Moon Pearl, but I had known that you had forfeited early on. So it's like at that point, it's like nothing was coming easy. It was just a slog of like, okay, all I have to do is finish this race and I'm done. And it just would not fucking end.
It did not end. I felt so bad. I hate forfeiting early, but I couldn't figure out what to do. And
I think
so
ultimately
pissed.
I won on paper, but you had the moral victory of just not dealing with that shit.
Right. I just remember feeling so bad watching you finish because you have the finish time of 2:18:29. This is a regular inverted seed, no keys, no nothing. It was just inverted, and it wasn't like you had to kill blind early or kill like do some cold stare or 3 hearts or whatever.
We actually did have to kill blind if we didn't understand how to get to Turtle Rock. I think it was a low heart blind. It was an option, and I think both you and I missed the easy way to get the pearl earlier, and then we just went back and it was like we had a potion, like maybe like 4 hearts, and it was just
Oh, it was bad though. It went on for a really long time. I've always felt really bad about that one ever since season 1.
I mean, we do have a chance to play again this year, and unfortunately, I think we're meeting up in Swordless Week. So if you want to do another like bullshit, kind of grudge match, I mean, I'm on board with that.
Yeah, we might have to. I was trying to avoid Swordless, but we might have to get a grudge match going there. So you enjoyed season 1 then of the leagues from what you're saying. It was great.
Yeah, like I said, it was great.
Season 2, you replace Ultima with Oasi. I don't know how much you want to get into it with Ultima.
To say we replaced him is sort of a kind of an understatement based on the fact that both you and I had to ban him, but that's besides the point.
Right. Okay. So actually, before we even get to that, let's talk a little bit about you were part of that first council. What made you want to join the council, and how do you feel it went, and especially having to ban one of your league teammates? It's such a shitty situation to be in.
Oh, yeah, that was basically one of the biggest, I think, back and forth we've had during that council year. But it was, I don't know, it was early on when they announced the council to happen. I wasn't that, I guess, well known in the community. This would have been early 2019. So it was there for probably like less than a year. I don't play as often as some like the really like hardcore people would do. Like I would do maybe like 2 or 3 seeds a week, but like other people would be like really grinding out more random than I could. Whereas like I couldn't just do more than a seed a day because I get huge seed blindness. But for some reason, it's like, okay, well, we'll join up. We'll see what happens. I think my council application was something like, oh yeah, I'll help new people learn how to do stuff. But I think I read it afterwards. It was just like really poorly written, and to this day, I actually have no idea why I was even chosen for it.
I kind of felt the same way. I was like, I'm going to apply because I'm so involved with like the league and stuff, but I don't expect to get it. Then I got it, and I'm like, how did this kind of happen? But yeah.
Well, I'm glad we were in the same boat in that regard. But
so, I mean, yeah, that first season, that first council term. Tell me your thoughts about all that.
So it was almost completely open-ended. Like there was a couple of things we had to do that was like basically long delayed. I think the first one being like Mimic Clip. But at that point in time, like there was no rules. Like you would just sit there and try to figure out what was going on. And so we tried to do some level of figuring out what we needed to do. I actually really enjoyed one of Wayne's early stuff there, of like doing these like kind of mini newsletters of the decisions we made. Granted, they got a lot of blowback, but I think those were a great idea, at least, that never went through since then. But it's like at that point, like there wasn't really anything we had to do. It was just sort of like everything. It was everything we had to do, but there's no real guidelines. So we were just kind of we were just winging it.
Right. It was like, all right, you're the council, figure this out. And it's like, figure out what? I'm like, oh, just figure all of it out. They got tired of, because the rules for Rando were based off of the NMG rules, and Rando is so different than NMG. And, new stuff is being found. I think you mentioned the Mimic Clip thing was was rather new, and I think there was some other stuff I can't even remember. So we had all of that, and then we had the cheating accusation against Ultima, who ended up getting banned, who was part of your teammate. Again, I don't you have to talk about more than you want to talk about with it, but kind of your perspective on all of just the Ultima thing and figuring all that shit out.
Yeah, just like I would think that from my point of view, my strength was never with regard to VOD review. So I was never be able to person to sit down and figure out what was like suspicious, what was not. So most of the actual kind of discussion about what happened on anyone that we actually reviewed was just sort of like I would go through it, I would watch it, I would have my initial opinions, but in terms of like what was weird, I would kind of defer towards the people who did that more. Like I think it was people at the time was like AK or Korak or people who were actually a little bit more involved with that kind of stuff beforehand. That would just like see their analysis and just kind of have some points in there. But so in terms of just other than that, like, some stuff there that was just, okay, it was pretty straightforward and obvious. First things we do, I would just download someone's VODs from Twitch just to make sure they didn't disappear in the middle of the night, and then re-upload them to my YouTube account as necessary. But
Right.
But other than that, like of all the things we had to do, I think the cheating stuff was sort of just not my wheelhouse. So I just never, I mean, I was involved with it because we had to be, but it was just not my go-to thing of things to be concerned about.
Yeah. The cheating part sucks. That was the part I honestly, I didn't really like any of it. I don't like coming up with rules. I don't like, trying to figure out who's cheating or not. I just kind of want to enjoy the game. And so I was not cut out to be on the council. Like I tried, but I'm also too opinionated too, where it's like I'm strong and emotional and we're willing to argue with people and stuff. But
well, I think there was a lot of arguing early on and some of that stuff there.
Was a lot.
I think a lot of it was good. I think some of the early stuff that we were doing was probably the first round of auto tracking things. And it ultimately failed, I think that there was a lot of strong opinions on it. I was more on the pro side, and it was through like a lot of the arguments that other people was making that I started became more like online with, okay, maybe auto tracking in entrance mode is not a good idea. Maybe there should be limits to it. I think it was like Korek himself that actually had some really good points that kind of made me start thinking about that more. But it didn't really sway my opinion. I think that it really kind of made me thinking more towards what their viewpoints were. And even though it was like a lot of it was heated, I did read pretty much everything and just take it to heart as best as possible.
Sure. I mean, that first council had a lot of strong personalities, right? Like, I feel like the council now doesn't have as many of those like strong personalities, people that are probably a little bit more level-headed, but you had a lot of people that were willing to argue their points, sometimes loudly. You, on the other hand, are from all our interactions are very even keeled and level headed about a lot of it. And I
wouldn't consider myself a strong opinion. Like I had more positive things on some certain stuff, but once I had my say, like there wasn't really anything more to say. So I didn't have any reason to try to like convince further or something like that there. Like I didn't have to write like a full magnum opus about why auto tracking is good, because otherwise I don't write that well to start with, so I'm not going to convince people, but just sort of like I think it's good, we should do this.
How long did you end up lasting on the council?
I just did 2 seasons. I think it was two terms rather. And it was like after that, I was still actively playing at the time, but for me, it just felt like that getting new people in was a better goal than just sitting there for a period of time. Like I just felt like, okay, 2 seasons done. I did things, I contributed, and then had nothing more I needed to prove or like that. So I just willingly gave up the seat and just to make sure someone else got a chance to join up who was still active or doing some more stuff there. So.
Is that when you moved into a moderator role for the ALTTPR Discord?
No, I think the moderator stuff didn't come until like sometime well after the fact, like probably a couple of years at that point. Okay. It was just sort of like, I think in that situation, it was more like I was still around the main server. When people would have new questions, I would just be one of the few people who'd be there. And so I think at some point I was just like, hey, Trinexx is helpful. Let's just get him to do some minor stuff there. So, and that's basically all the role is now. It's just a person who can kind of move things around and just that, but I'm not doing anything of note other than occasionally being able to delete stuff or ban people. That's basically it.
Sure. I mean, that's kind of what the mod is supposed to be anyways, right? Like someone to help moderate and help people point them in the right directions, right?
No, that's it. It's just kind of like, it's just a really minor kind of just watching, making sure things are going fine. Or
Right. So you move into season 2. How does Oase become part of Two Pearl?
So they've always been part of the same back group of friends from the Ultimate server that we were kind of all part of there, like the ATP Fando, whatever stuff there. Once Ultimate was gone, we just needed some other player to do stuff, and Oase said they would, and so that's basically how it happened. So
yeah. Another really good dude. Another guy that's really good at the game as well.
Yeah, he hasn't been playing too much there. I think he's been doing other stuff there. And I think that we're getting him back for do league stuff. And that's kind of what Olive and Oase are kind of just doing now, is just like occasionally pop up once a year, do some stuff there. I think Olive is doing the Fringe tournament stuff there, but
sure.
It's really kind of like just dialed back with level of play in terms of that.
So how has the league overall after season 1 kind of treated you?
I would say in general, league seasons have been pretty good. Like I think from my point of view of how I treat the league, I think season 2 was really, really fun in terms of like keeping the same level of like non-stress with regard to that. I think it was starting to season 3, season 4 starting to become a little bit more, I guess, when the league became competitive. And it's a not very well-defined term, but it's just sort of like, the way I played it wasn't any different, but it's just sort of like what other people's expectations of it became a lot more stronger than I thought they ever deserved. And that's not to say the league wasn't deserving of it. It just sort of like, it just became more than what I thought it was going to be. I
mean, I always go back to your definition of what the league is, or what, you know, what initially was conceived as, and it's kind of like, as you said multiple times in many discords, it's like a beer softball league, and that's what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be the pros. It's not supposed to be the major leagues. It's more of like a beer softball league where you try to do well, but in the end, you're just there to have fun with your friends.
Yeah, and it's like you show up, you have some beer with your friends. People you're playing against is like some 80-year-old grandma who's doing some stuff there, who's just doing the exact same stuff. Like you're trying to have fun, but you basically, the person you're playing against is yourself. You want to do well, but just keeping everything as even as possible. But it's like I've never done softball myself. I think my direct comparison would be like a bowling league. But it's the same thing where it's like you see like people who are like townies doing some stuff there who are just like old retirees. Every once in a while you see like one person taking it too seriously and like swearing because they missed they missed conveying some strike. Like, dude, calm the fuck down.
Right. Yeah.
But it's just like, as long as you come with a 6-pack and have some during the middle of it, like that's kind of all you want to get out of it.
Sure. Yeah. And that's the hard part about the league, right? It is after season 1, season 2 blew up, and then it just kind of grew beyond that. And then when you have that many people, it's like, it kind of becomes its own.
Like everything that happened makes perfect sense. Like you want to make sure that teams aren't a blowout, so therefore you have to do some level of balancing. That's why the open league became a thing, so that we can have some level of fun between each other. But then of course the next step is like, well, how do we become invitational? In my case, it was just sign up early. But for the other people who joined it later, it's like you have to kind of start proving yourself, and it's just like it has a level of, I can't quite describe it, but it just like increased it a little bit more than I would have wanted. It's like now I have to worry about being relegated, which is like the next step worse than making the playoffs, which I never want to do.
So you like where your team's at, like in the middle. Yeah.
Because if I have 7 weeks to have towards this thing, I can dedicate them. There's no question mark about what happens afterwards. It's just done. Yeah. Have fun, you do your stuff, and go on from there. With how the playoffs evolve, well, granted, I've not been part of them. That it's kind of hard. It's funny to say like how bad I feel about it, but like they're just as long as the league season. Like if you're the winner, like you're playing longer than you would for the 7 weeks, and it just seems kind of ridiculous to me. Like things would go that long. Versus just, top teams in the division play the next after that and just call it a day. Have a banquet, have your free chicken, your early.
Give everyone a trophy.
Exactly. Your 30-cent trophy that has like some baseball player made out of plastic.
Yeah, I love that approach. I think mentally, I'd like to have that approach. I'd like it if I could approach the game like that way, because I think mentally for me, it'd help. But there's also this like competitive edge where I'm like, I got to be the best, and it's sort of like this butting heads of casual and competitive that I can't really make heads or tails out of,
Yeah, I would say one of the main reasons that I don't like being full on competitive is that I've had people in my life that just seem to take things way too seriously.
Yeah.
And it just like, when they win, it's like you have like really good celebration type stuff there, like kind of joyful stuff. But when they lose, it just becomes like an energy drain for everyone in the room. And it's not necessarily related to gaming, but let's say was like one example I have is that unfortunately I'm a Patriots fan, and I go visit like, some game day stuff with my family. And then, they had a good, pretty strong winning streak for quite some period of time. But when they have like a bad game, yeah, exactly. But when they have a bad game, one of my parents' friends would like start swearing, or like get like just be full on drunk and just like, just dropping F-bombs for like the next like 15 minutes because they didn't get a touchdown or something. And it's like that, watching those kind of stuff that happen, that just kind of drains my level of like wanting to be part of that kind of stuff there. And it's like, it's happened occasionally during gaming and stuff where it's like, what is it? One of the games I was playing for some period of time on Switch was Killer Queen Black. It was something that Aura had recommended once because I think that they had like just enjoyed some of the arcade stuff. And so I was doing, I'm not sure how to describe the game exactly, but it's like there was a casual mode. You would be like play with 4 people online, and you can rank up, or you can just play in this sort of a casual queue. And I was in that, and at a certain point, it was like I would play one of the games and get the special role, the queen, and play really badly. And all of a sudden, people popped up on voice chat, which I had not heard before on this game, and they were like berating how bad I was playing. And it's just like why are you taking this so seriously? Like we are in a casual queue, like we're not like playing for anything. And all of a sudden it's like hearing my name, like just getting like sort of like, oh, you should never play the queen again. You fucking suck. And there's been a lot of instances of that in my life and some of the competitive games I've played that I've never pushed beyond wanting to get better beyond my like skill level of wanting what I wanted to do. So it's like never wanted to join tournaments, never do more than that. I think that one of the main things that made Link to the Past better for me was that, for the most part, nothing your opponent does matters, like at all. Right. Like other than the fact you're playing against them and they have a history, they don't have any effect on your play other than them hitting done first. Right. And so it's just sort of like you can do your stuff in your own head, and most of your disappointments is just sort of like on you. Right. And sometimes I get, I feel bad because, my level of play was not what I could do. Like I died to a boss in some stupid way, or like just some other random stuff there. But like at a certain point, like, okay, well, I'm in Ice Rod Hunt Road and it's like there's 3 pendants left. Which do I choose? Those are like perfectly fine levels of like loss to me, because it's like I have to make a choice. It could be wrong. Right. At that point, it doesn't matter. Right. And totally. Yeah. And so, I've definitely gotten some level of tilt and some angry at certain points of myself. It's mostly been because I played poorly in a very specific way. Like, I think one of my major feel bads was actually, it was a league match. And I think it was versus Solski in season 2. I think it was an Enemizer race. And I tried to do diver down, and there was a yellow spike block blocking me. And at that point, I flooded the key. I couldn't do the thing. And I like lost by 10 minutes. And like, that's one of the few matches that I feel like bad about, that I just didn't play well. Right. But other times, though, it's like other matches. One of my most memorable matches, the games I've lost, and I managed to get through like one hit KO Ice Palace. And it took me 20 minutes to do so, but fucking I did it. And at that point, the ending does not matter. I had done a challenge I had set out to do. I did it. And then that counts as a win for me to a certain point.
No, that's an awesome approach to it for sure. I really like that. I think it's a healthy approach, right? It's like trying to make sure that the game doesn't become more than the game. It's just something that you can enjoy. That way, the game that you're enjoying the game regardless, right? Win or loss, you're really enjoying what you're playing. Yeah, it's kind of playing as much as I can. I think one of the major stresses that at some point when you do get to certain levels of brackets that, I can't avoid the level of like competitiveness to it, that you get a certain like mindset that is really hard to avoid. And so I've done poorly in some brackets because I think that the level of stress gets to me. And especially when it gets to like best 2 out of 3 games, you lose the first one. It just sort of like has a level of pressure that I don't quite respond well to. Sure. Which is why I was at the most recent tournament I played in was at the Casual Boots tournament, the best of 1 brackets. Fantastic. You play a game, you're done. Right. It does not matter. It's like, I think I lost to Gamachu. I was kicked out by Gamachu by like 38 seconds, and that's like fine. Like, sure. I only had to do it once. I didn't have to worry about it again. And then was yeah, totally. Have you played other tournaments besides, we'll get to the casual boots one, but did you join main tournaments or any of the other tournaments?
So the first main tournament that I did was probably 2019. I think it was 2018 fall. I did a early part of the qualifiers. I could only do one, so I never got a chance to qualify. But I think my only major main tournament run was in 2019, and I got to the second round of brackets, and I lost to Jet.
Oh, okay.
Which is like not the worst thing to do, but also I also like played myself out of it by doing some really dumb stuff. But that was probably my best run. Like, nothing to complain. Like I made round of 30, like round of 64, round of whatever it was at the time. Like that's fine.
Sure.
In terms of like how many people are in this tournament, like that's kind of the best that most people could do, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So there's that competitiveness that you're talking about, but there's tournaments going on like constantly now. There's, it used to be main tournament, league, and then league came, and then league and main tournament. Now there's literally a new tournament launching every 3 to 6 months now. What made you want to join the Kaz Boots one? And have you joined any others, like the Kabuki tournament or anything?
So I am in the Kabuki tournament. I think the mode's fun. It's also like an interesting mode that I would be willing to play for a period of time there. Not thrilled on how they have the brackets set up, but maybe I could just force myself to not be in them. Don't air that out loud. But
it's the exact opposite of the Kaz Boots tournament.
Exactly. But the group stages are fun. You play at least 6 games with some of your folks there, and maybe things go from there. But the main issue with that is that, once it starts going with league, that kind of some overlaps. Just trying to minimize that as much as I can. But for the most part, I've not done that many tournaments. Like looking through my history, I did other than league, I have co-op tournament 2020, co-op tournament, Legend League, casual boots. I've basically kept myself out of a lot of the bigger name stuff there.
Sure. Just joining the stuff that you enjoy, right?
Yeah, for the most part. And I think that for the main tournaments, the thing that I enjoy are actually the qualifiers more than I do the groups or brackets. Like I enjoy the larger races, just because there's more than just winning or losing. It's sort of like you can place top. It's just there's more of a win condition than just did you get first place?
Right. So are you playing on the ladder then?
No, I don't do ladder much, and that's not because I'm against ladder. It's just that it doesn't fit very well with how I like to play the game. So I don't do entrance modes for various stuff there. And so it's sort of like if I could sit down on a Wednesday night, 7 p.m., and there would always be a casual boots ladder, that'd be great. But that's not how the ladder is set up. It's sort of like, well, maybe it's on a Thursday night. I'm feeling like I might play a game. If I'm feeling Zelda, maybe I'll check to see what it is. If it's these cross keys, I just immediately close Discord and just do something else. But it just never quite worked out the same schedule as I would want to do. And I'm not the person to sit down and like plan ahead. Like I looked at the calendar a couple times to see what modes I would like to play. But other than that, it just never quite works out that it aligns with how I want to play.
God, there's something that I so admire about you, and that's you know what you want, and that's what you do, which sounds so basic and simple, but it's like, I'm like, there's this like FOMO of missing out on tournaments that I kind of have, or I feel like I got to do this or I got to do that. And then I'm joining stuff that I don't really want to do. And it sounds like to me, you've kind of got that in your pocket.
I would say that it's not something that it was easy to do. Like I did a lot more playing back in like 2019. I think in 2020, as I started to like wane a little bit in terms of like my engagement with stuff. Keep sticking around, doing stuff there. But I think that keeping my level of gaming to more of like stuff that I want to do is been able to keep me in the community longer versus trying to find some situation like me burning out from like playing too many stuff there, because I know that I would get a certain way if I get myself overcommitted, and if I get there, it's unlikely to go well for me.
What's the future hold for you then? Are you comfortable with where you're at? Do you see yourself playing this game for the next few years or so?
I mean, I can see myself for maybe a couple of years, but I mean, I would say my general interest in the game is, I've been naturally waning. Like I enjoy being around people. I like doing some stuff that, here and there, as long as League exists and as long as we don't definitely get relegated, maybe I'll keep doing that for some period of time there. But it's hard to say how I'm going to do. Like my level of practicing in the game is basically peaked at this point. Like I don't have the energy to do grinding of rooms to improve my NMG time, even though I want to get like a 126 and it's like right on the cusp, but it's just like, I don't have the drive to sit down like, I'm going to do escape now.
Right. Yeah, totally.
And as time's gone on, I would say my activation energy of playing the game is getting higher and higher. Although when I'm actually playing it, I'm enjoying it. And it's like trying to balance that level of stuff to make sure I can get over that hump, especially when there's other games I'm playing that can, drive my attention instead.
Sure. We have a question in chat that I think is a really good question. It says, how have you approached practice and improvement? Are you meticulous and structured about it? Are you laid back, or do you just repeatedly play seeds, etc.?
So back when I was actively practicing, I think when I was doing my first NMG run, I borrowed a spreadsheet from someone that actually had every single NMG room in the game, and you would just write down what your practice times were and try to get to some arbitrary level. I think it was basically I think it was the baseline was like the noob's place. And I actually went through room by room, trying to do some level of grinding, and that got me to basically my baseline level of competence and get my NMG time down. And then since then, in order to get myself to the next level, I basically have to do that again, really kind of push myself to the next level. And it just haven't gotten to that level of wanting to do that. But that was definitely what got me there to start with.
Sure.
And then in addition to that, for more random specific stuff, when I'd be watching restreams, every once in a while, like there'd be some random, like maybe questionable thing that a commentator says, and then the chat would be kind of talking it back and forth. And if I'm not doing anything, I'll just boot up the practice hack and just try some stuff here and there. And it just happened to be kind of a random one-off stuff. Like, okay, well, let's see if this is actually real. And then, and like that's basically how I did my stuff early on. And at some point, then I stopped caring to the same degree, but
right.
That's what got me to my baseline level of competence. And then from there, I never pushed myself further. And so as time's gone on, you start seeing a lot more people become, definitely surpassing you. And just the number of people who've actually gotten really great at this game has been wonderful to see. But at a certain point, like, nope, that's not what I'm going to be able to compete with anymore. So
right.
I am happy with myself being level B plus player. And that's fine by me. Like that's all I'll ever be. I have other contributions to this community, so I'm okay with that.
Sure. Do you miss those days of the big races on the weekends and kind of going all the time? Do you think you'd be playing more if those were still around?
To a certain extent, yes. But also, like, even the bigger races that exist, like your weekly has some decent people, but it happens on a noon on a Saturday for me, which I would much rather be outside, like going for a bike ride or something. So it's just like maybe in the winter it'd be more fun to see, but it's just sort of, I'm not sure if those come back will bring me back. It's just sort of like that was the part that was fun for me at the time.
Sure. Yeah, I get that. For sure. I have this like love-hate relationship with big races. I do miss those days. There was something fun about having 80 people in a race that wasn't like a qualifier. But I also placed so poorly in those that I don't miss them.
Well, so as long as you discount people who are like blatantly trying to clown route to get the high times in those.
Sure.
It's like if you kind of like don't go for first, you just kind of go for certain levels. Like you can also like pick random people who are joined up, like some of your friends, and like my goal is to beat you arbitrarily for no reason whatsoever. This is my goal, and you can kind of do minor gloating afterwards. You can make up your own rules after the fact as to what you did well or didn't do well.
And that was the problem with being friends with Gamachu, is I could just never beat that. Gosh, we hit the hour mark already. The tilt question, you've listened to the show. You know it's coming. You seem well equipped to handle tilt based off of your approach to the game. So how do you handle tilt? Mid-seed, post-seed? What are the ways for you to handle that?
I have points in Zelda where I don't really qualify as like getting full on tilted. Like tilting, I see more in direct PvP games, like actually like multiplayer that you're playing with other people. Like that is like what actually gets me more further than that. But in Zelda, for the most part, it's sort of like if you've done bad on a boss, then it gets sort of draining on you to a certain period of time. And sometimes I can get over it. But sometimes it just, at the end of the day, it's like you have to acknowledge the fact that I'm not having fun. I can't get myself out of this rut. So you just forfeit and just kind of call it a loss for the day. And being able to identify when that's the case is sort of how I've kept myself healthier in some certain point of time. It's not been perfect. I still get angry at random stuff occasionally. I have outbursts like for like a period of times that just yelling at Moth. It's always Moth. Like Moth just screws me up more often than not. But it's just like sometimes you can get back. Sometimes it just depends on when it hits in the right time. But in other games especially, it's sort of like having to realize the fact that I am both not playing well and I'm also getting destroyed. And like try not to throw myself back in that fire again and again, and just taking a breather, doing something completely mindless for a few moments, and then I can typically pull it back from there. But
sure,
if I've gotten too far, then yes, at that point, I think my love towards the game diminishes a bit if I just don't realize it ahead of time. So I'll step away for like a week or do some stuff there. But it is very difficult to actually acknowledge the fact when you've gotten to that point. But when I've noticed myself there, I've taken some steps to kind of enjoy, preserve my love of the game I'm playing and not hating it for the rest of my life. And
right.
I've made attempts with Zelda to do that, because otherwise, if I push myself too hard for burnout, I'm probably done with Link to the Past at least. And so just kind of keeping my engagement to a level where I'm comfortable with is what's helping me keep here for longer.
Cool. It's great advice. Gosh, I just love your kind of approach to it. I feel like going into the game, you have a healthier approach so that when the shit falls, you're able to handle it a little bit better. You know what I mean? I just think there's I don't know, there's nuggets of truth and things that I could take from that and apply it to myself in ways that's
at the end of the day, what I'm saying is just play the game slightly less. Like, I don't know, like, I guess that's
sure. Yeah. So many times I would lose and be pissed that I lost and be tilted and then fire up another seed. And I'm already pissed. What am I doing? This is going to help? No, it's going to make it worse. Take a break. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
No, it's been great to have you here. I mean, I've been enjoying the show since it started. Everyone's story has been great. So I'm just looking forward to hear where you got going on from here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Have a good one.
Big shout outs to Trinexx for coming on the show. Really glad to hear his story and hear his perspective, and just a good dude, man. Really loved having him on the show, and glad that he's a part of this community. I'm glad everyone was able to hear his story as well. Like, as a mod in the main Discord, that's super helpful and kind of behind the scenes. But hopefully I can shine a light on who he is as a person and how awesome he is. So again, thanks Trinexx for coming on. 216 Weekly again this Saturday, noon Eastern as always. We'll be playing in Vroja, twitch.tv/fearagent_ if you want to watch that. You, of course, can join the race as well. You grab yourself a 216 Weekly role in the Discord. You can get a ping when the race room opens. And if you can't race it and you want to run it async, you can do that as well, as we post a link to the seeds in that channel. So check that out. We'll be back on Monday with Willard J. Bradley. Awesome conversation with Willard. That was a lot of fun. I'm really excited for this one to go out. Willard has been around forever and was on the couch for the Andy Christos GDQ match with Vitorp and Patty. And so kind of one of the voices early on for a lot of people in Rando. Has built a really cool community over on his Twitch. Yeah, it's just an awesome part of the community, and has a lot of knowledge on the game, and is just a cool dude. And we had a really fun conversation. So I'm excited for everyone to hear that. That will be this Monday. So check that out. Website's 216pod.com. Subscribe to the show, has links to the Discord. Join our Discord if you'd like to talk about all things 216, Rando, sports. Lots of sports talk going on over there with the football season in full effect. Baseball season's about to hit the postseason, and I'm sure I'll be posting about that as the Mariners have made the playoffs for the first time in 20 years. So very excited about that. So yeah, make sure you join the Discord. Subscribe wherever you get podcasts. We're available everywhere. If you could leave a review on Apple Podcasts, that really helps the show. If you could share the show with your friends, that would also help out a lot. 3 shows left until the end of the season. We'll be back Monday, as I said, with Willard J. Bradley. Really appreciate you all. See you next week.